Today we're going to do port scanning with Nmap. So Nmap stands for Network Map. You use port scanning to figure out what a target host is running, what ports are open, what operating system they're on, different information about a host. So you can use port scanning to test your firewall settings. So for example, if you're trying to close a port, let's say you don't want anyone from the outside world coming in on port 80. You could block that port at your firewall. So port 80 is web traffic. And you could use port scanning to make sure that that port is actually closed. You can do scans internally to test your company's security, see what's out there. Hackers use port scanning as part of the kind of testing, fingerprinting phase of attack to gain information about a target. So figuring out what operating systems someone's running, things like that. It's important to note that port scanning is generally considered legal. However, you should only perform port scans on computers for which you have authorization. Do not go out and run a port scan on the FBI's servers just for fun to see what ports the FBI has open. They might not take too kindly to that. Now, I'm sure lots of people do it. The person who created the Nmap software claims he's run thousands of port scans on public websites, public servers, etc., without ever getting into legal trouble. But it can be misinterpreted. There was a Finnish student, I think he was 17 years old, who did a port scan of a Finnish bank, an intense port scan, really trying to get into the details of what this bank was doing. He was prosecuted and he was found guilty of committing a computer crime. So it can happen. One in the United States, somebody did a port scan. It was a network, an IT administrator was doing a port scan of somebody who was offering him IT services. So he was checking to make sure his service provider was doing things securely. He did a port scan and he was accused of a crime, went to trial, but was found not guilty. Now, I don't want any of you to even be accused of a crime. I want you to stay very much on the safe side of the law. So only scan like your own computer, or if your friend is sitting next to you and your friend lets you scan their computer or something, go ahead. You don't want your actions to be misinterpreted. Even if you have absolutely no malicious intent, you just want to be extremely safe. So I'm going to guide you through an exercise that will allow you to do everything safely. First thing you have to do, download Nmap. Now for Windows, you follow the download link. You'll download a program called Zenmap. So if I bring this up, the website is effective, not exactly beautiful. You want the latest stable release self-installer. So download that Nmap 7.5.0 setup. That will come with Zenmap. So in the Windows world, after you install it, you can search for the Zenmap app or search for Nmap. The Zenmap GUI is a graphical front end for the Nmap program. We'll show how they work together. So let's do our first scan. So in the target, this is who I want to scan. So I'm going to scan scanme.nmap.org. So this is a server that the people who created Nmap, they put this server out on the internet for people to do test scans. So all of us have authorization to scan the server. So that's why we're going to use that as an example. I'm going to choose quick scan in the profile. There's lots of different default settings you can use for scans. I'm going to stick with quick scan for now. And I'm just going to click the scan button. And so you can see this Nmap is running. And our scan has finished, so that quick scan was actually very quick. So it started Nmap, and it finished, and so it tells me that the host is up, and it tells me the latency. So scanme.nmap.org is actually up and running, so that's good. In the quick scan, Nmap does not try to scan every single port in existence. Instead, it scans the most common ports. So port 22, it tells us that's open. So the service running on port 22, we've used that before, is SSH, which is interesting. It means maybe if I had the right username and password, or the right credentials, the right certificate file, I could log in to the server using PuTTY with SSH. So I could open up PuTTY, and instead of an IP address, I would just put scanme.nmap.org. And I could attempt to log in. Now port 80 is open, so port 80 is used for HTTP traffic. So that means it's probably running a website. So if I went to HTTP scanme.nmap.org, I would probably see a web page. So I can, and there we are. So here's the website that URL refers to. So you can see here, the gentleman who created Nmap, here's your authorization. You are authorized to scan this machine with Nmap or other port scanners, but just a couple scans a day, please. We shouldn't do a denial of service attack on this server. Okay, so that's running, so that's good. So I've learned a little bit of information about that server running this port scan. Notice when I type up here, type anything, that the command is edited in this part of the interface. So I could put an IP address here. And again, that command goes there in the command text box. You can copy and paste that command. You can see I've got a command prompt open. I can run that scan from the command line just using the Nmap command line tool. So there we go, we're going to scan. I see the exact same information here that I see in the Zenmap GUI. So if you're running Nmap in Linux, I mean, Zenmap does exist in Linux too, but you could run it from the command line. You could run the command line on OS X. I'm sorry, OS 10 as well. Nmap is basically universal. One benefit of using the Zenmap GUI is that we have these tabs here and previous scans. If you just run Nmap from the command line, if you want to go back and find information, you have to scroll up and down. It doesn't organize things quite as clearly. If you're really familiar with Zenmap and port scanning, or Nmap and port scanning, you can find all the information from the command line, but really Zenmap, its benefits are in making the information more accessible. So let's go through these tabs. Ports and hosts, it's kind of a summary of the information. So filtered means it was probably blocked by a firewall somewhere. And we've only got 2 open. If we look at the topology, this is not terribly interesting because we only scanned 1 computer. If you can scan a whole range of IP addresses, like you could, in your target, if we're on the 192.168.10.1, we could scan essentially all computers in that subnetwork. So we could do a whole network. You could scan thousands of machines. The more machines you scan, if you're in a big organization, this topology is going to show you where the routers are, where the different devices are, what's connected to what. It's going to be a much more interesting picture. We don't have that option right now because we're just using a single machine, but I mean, feel free to try it like at home on your home network. You could scan your whole subnet. If we look at the host details, we can see some information that's interesting. So we've got the IP address associated with scanme.nmap.org. We can see how many ports were scanned, how many were closed. Some information we just don't see. Information is not available. So a little bit of information. So it can help us if we're just trying to do some fingerprinting, trying to do some basic reconnaissance work to figure out what's going on this computer. We can do that. So that's good. So let's scroll down. Let's do another scan. Instead of a quick scan, let's do an intense scan. So I'm going to click the scan button. So Nmap is starting. It's starting to run. It's discovering some ports. If I click on the scans tab, notice that this first scan is saved. I can still open that one. It's telling me that this next one is running in the background. So I can still click around, use the GUI, figure out what's going on while the scan is running. So there's a lot more information here. You can tell that it's taking a lot more time than the quick scan. Intuitively, that should make sense. The quick scan is meant to be kind of a quick and dirty scan. The intent scan is going to be much more thorough, but if, let's say, if you're trying to scan 10,000 IP addresses, the quick scan might finish in a couple of minutes. The intent scan might take hours and hours to complete. Now, one thing about scanning, if you're the hacker, you don't want to be detected. So doing an intense scan on a whole bunch of IP addresses could raise some alarms for an organization. If you're sitting there, like if you're here on Northern Michigan University campus and you're constantly doing intense scans of different services, the people in the IT department just might wonder exactly what you're trying to do. Okay, so we're done. This scan is finished. So the intense scan took about 32 seconds to complete. Still not a super long time. You know, the slow comprehensive scan, that can take a couple of hours, but we're good for now. So let's look at what information we found here that we didn't get with the quick scan. If I click on ports and hosts, we can see that we've got a couple of other open ports that we didn't find with the quick scan. So the intent scan found more useful information that just doing the quick scan, it would not have found us. Did I find the version before? We can see that it's running Apache version 2.4.7 on Ubuntu, so it's running Linux. And we also know the version of OpenSSH, that's the SSH server software that it's running. That's all good stuff to know, potentially. I'll look at the host details. You can see that we have a little bit more information here. So the operating system, we didn't know that before. So we know that it's running Linux, somewhere version 3.2 to 4.0, doesn't exactly know. We can see a little bit more information. So yeah, this is, you know, good stuff, potentially. May take some getting used to. You can see some DNS information. Uptime and last boot time. We do have that information. I wonder, sometimes you have to be a little bit skeptical to take all this information at face value. for informational purposes. It's usually pretty accurate. Sometimes the operating system, it tries to make its best guess. It doesn't always get it right. That's okay. Our topology, we can see how we got there now. This is essentially like running trace route. So I can scroll in. These are essentially a bunch of different routers that I'm hopping over to get to scanme.nmap.org. Because this is on the public internet, that scanme.nmap.org, you know, this information here doesn't mean a whole lot to me. If I was scanning inside an organization, I could see where the IP addresses of individual routers and things, which might tell me where to poke and prod around for more useful information. So yeah, all this is good. If I had scanned other IP addresses, they would show up here in the left. I'm not going to scan anything else right now. I've just got this one, but I can load different scans. If I want to go back and compare the quick scan to the intense scan, I can take a look. So Nmap, the Zenmap GUI, is saving all this information for me and organizing it. So this is port scanning is a tool that every cybersecurity student should know. Every networking professional should have a handle on it. But if you were a cybersecurity student and somebody asked you about Nmap and you were deer in the headlights, you would not pass the job interview. This is one of the core tools. It's kind of like ping. Ping is to general network administrators what Nmap is to ethical hackers, penetration testers. You just have to know how to use it. It's one of the key tools of the trade. So we've done a couple of things. We've used Nmap to find open ports on a system. So we did that with a quick scan and intense scan, and we saw the differences. We found information about the target system, so we found that mostly in the host details section. And we've changed the scan profile. Now, if you want to go beyond the basics, all these parameters here, this, SVT4OF, there's a bunch of different parameters here that you can fiddle with, and you can change the way Nmap scans. For most people, for your general network administrator, sticking with the quick scan or intense scan or ping scan, those are going to be good enough. But if you really want to be uber hacker and you want to dig into it, you've got to learn what all of these command line options mean and how to tune them for a specific environment. So have fun with Zenmap. Feel free to try to scan things legally. On your home network, that would be fine. Stay out of trouble. Don't be accused of doing anything malicious. But this is a key tool. I was reading some of Red Hat's documentation, and when you set up a server, they recommend that you use Nmap to test your firewall. It's the standard way. The tool's free, it's ubiquitous, and it's something everyone should know.